Who has the first question?
In evaluating our own personal ministries, to look at and acknowledge and identify the ones who are better off because we've been here. I often feel there's a risk of a display of arrogance in that. And I think we look at Paul and say, well, he's an exception, one, because he's Paul, for crying out loud, but two, because he was, in Corinthians, he was talking to the people who were better off because he had been there. Where's the line between us going, okay, I really have made a difference in the kingdom, but in a humble manner, versus going, look at what I've done? How do we protect ourselves from crossing that line?
Sure. I believe everybody heard that question. I want to answer that on two levels. First of all, I would argue we have that problem no matter what we do, on every single level. If we are supporting our family, for example, we might get that point where we look for somebody else who's not supporting their family, and look at me, I'm supporting my family. Or I read the Bible with my neighbor. I mean, no matter what good thing we do, Sid, I would argue that we always have that pride thing. It's the one thing we just can't seem to run away from. That's the first thing. The second thing is that when it comes to ministry to our neighbor, we have a really wonderful standard, which is really anybody can meet, where we read that whoever gives a cup of cold water in the name of Christ will not lose their reward. So we have a statement there, give a cup of cold water is a good thing and is a ministry to our neighbor, a cup of cold water. How hard is that? Especially easier for us. It's harder for us to appreciate the cold. There we have refrigerators. A little bit harder for them to get cold water, is carry it from someplace else. But it's still a standard that anybody in this room can meet, the equivalent. So if we are able to meet that particular standard, then our standards, we can look all around and be encouraged that we have helped an awful lot of people. Thinking of Christ, the seed, some fell in stony, thorny, and some of the birds took it away. But you remember some fell in the good ground, and it multiplied. Interestingly, I don't really have a handle on this myself yet. Some 30, some 60, some 100. I'm thinking, how do I get to be the 100? I don't really want to be the 30. I'm 30 good, but I kind of like to be the 100. And I'm not really sure exactly how that works. But we know the 100 guy is going to maybe look at the 30 guy and say, what's wrong with you? But he can't use that, the possibility of thinking that way, to keep away from multiplying the 100-fold. Do you have a follow-up question on that?
Perhaps more than in how do you express that without maybe sounding arrogant. I've had conversations with people who, talking about their salvation, they say, well, I made a profession of faith, I prayed a prayer, and I was baptized when I was 6 years old, and so the question then becomes, well, what have you been doing lately? How has that continued? And they stick with, well, when I was 6. And how do you go, okay, well and do you even go, well, take my life for an example. Since I've been saved, I've done this and this and this. Again, it comes across as arrogant. How do you explain that difference and that idea of continuing in growth without having that thrown back in your face as, well, you're awful arrogant, doesn't that mean you're not saved?
Sure.
Kind of comment.
Sure, and Paul certainly was subject to that. I mean, to say, I've never said this, I'd be kind of scared to say it, be followers of me as I am of Christ. That's quite a thing to say. You want to know what it's like to follow Christ? Paul's saying, look at me. I think what gets us out of that somewhat is Paul's own ministry, which was so, and I know I keep on going back to Acts 20, the Ephesian elders there in that passage, but there in Acts 20, he presents his ministry. He does the same thing in 2 Corinthians 2, I'm sorry, 2 Corinthians, the whole book of 2 Corinthians, and he defends his ministry, and he basically says, look, you guys know what I've been like. I've been there with you. You know these hands, for example, have provided for me and all my needs. And we are, and there's a whole lot more that could be said on this, Sid. We mostly are concerned about the charge of arrogance towards us. In Christian circles, that's a big charge. And it makes us want to back off right away. And even we get that in our witnessing all the time from the world. Who do you think you are to tell me? And we're concerned about that charge. I believe Paul was a lot more, I don't think he was concerned about that charge. I believe he was a lot more concerned about the charge of hypocrisy. Because you recall, that was the one that Christ dealt with the most. It was you hypocrites. And I would have to say that maybe we need to change our thinking just around a little bit. Not be quite so sensitive about the charge of arrogance, and be more concerned about the charge of hypocrisy. So I think that's where Paul was coming from most of the time. I think that's why he ministered right beside people. You can't charge me with hypocrisy. You know, you've seen it. There's a lot more to be said about that. Good question.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I mean, Christ certainly came off as arrogant. No doubt about it.
Yeah, how about I am the way, the truth, and the life?
Yeah. I mean, and you know, I think I would rather come off as arrogant and bold than weak and and have no defense for Christ. You know, I mean, and even to the point that maybe I had too much arrogance. That's still better. I believe it's still better than coming off as weak and afraid to share the gospel.
Yeah, even Christ talks in a way that we wouldn't talk. They say to him, you bear witness of yourself, your witness is not true. He says, well, yeah, it is true. You know, and he's not like, well, let me explain this a different way in order for you to understand. Christ consistently comes back as strong at people as they came at him. Something that we are, I would argue, are kind of taught not to do in most Christian circles. If someone else comes against us fairly strong, then we often like, well, I just know you want to know the truth. Apparently the problem is me not explaining it well. Here, I'll try again so you can get it. You know, Christ didn't do a whole lot of that, neither did Paul. Saul today shook out the folds of his garments against them. Okay, we have a question right here.
And when you shake off your garments,
yeah.
At what point do you say, cut it off and say, all right, you're not interested in the truth. I'm out of here.
Yeah, which is
you're on your own.
Yeah, Paul, and which Paul
blood's
did
on your own head.
Yeah, which was said before. He had said the blood's on your own head. They had already said that years before. When they crucified Christ, his blood be on us and on our children. Wow, what a thing to say. Yeah, when do you do that? I don't know if I can say exactly when you do that, but it sure looks like in that passage, he had done everything he could. Everything, and he wasn't getting anywhere. He's moving on.
There is a point.
Yeah, that's the point. Even if I can't say what the point is, that doesn't mean there is no point. Yes, maybe that.
I don't know what you or anybody thinks of Paul Washer. I heard him make a comment once about what Sid was saying. When you're dealing with someone who claims to be saved or know God or whatever, he asks somebody, he says, what time in your life did you begin to love the things that God loves and hate the things that God hates? I've used that. I think it works pretty well.
Sure, it's a fair question and a good one. And Paul Washer himself has paid dearly for asking that question. Not been invited back to places. Yes, we have another question.
Piggybacking off of what John said, I was in a conversation the other day where someone asked me about the imprecatory prayers. And they had been reading through the Psalms, and they came across some of these from David. And they were going, how in the world?
I guess that's always a moment, isn't it? Please, read through the Bible in a year. Okay, good. What in the world is they made the children be childless? What?
Right. Well,
Or mothers be childless.
And this guy didn't even realize what he'd gotten into. But
Right.
he was going, David is praying some horrible things for these people. Isn't that wrong of him to be praying such terrible things? That shouldn't he, as we as Christians, should we be more loving? And wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it show God's glory more if we prayed that God would save them? And we got into the conversation about the difference between our personal enemies, where praying those prayers would be wrong, and praying those prayers against God's enemies, and that there is a difference. Perhaps not always, but often there is. Isn't that a similar issue that John was talking about as to what point does someone become not just your own enemy, but the enemy of God, where you are not only okay or excused, but actually justified and expected to shake your garments out and shake the dust off your feet and say, I'm done with you. I think that's a discussion we probably ought to look more into as believers.
Sure. If we're going to take our positions seriously and understand we're in a war here and not an academic discussion, that is something we have to pay some attention
Right. I think it's something that we have to understand, and it's something that we have to be able to explain to other believers who are starting to ask these questions but aren't anywhere close to the answers.
to. Sure.
I think a lot of times in this particular congregation, I've been in a lot of congregations, we are a little closer to looking at that question seriously, understanding that it is a valid question, where most Christians say, well, we shouldn't pray those kinds of prayers for anybody ever. Well, if David did, then there must be a time. We need to start being able to explain through those discussions.
Yeah, and there's a lot more to that. We know that those prayers were quoted in the New Testament. For example, we know that Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, prayed those prayers. And certainly, I found it intriguing. One of the most effective anti-Christians in the modern era, the name Christopher Hitchens, ring a bell with anybody? I just don't think it was an accident that he died. You know, in the imprecatory prayers, call for God's judgment against his enemies, and the judgment called against his enemies is the judgment that they've already called against God's people. So it's kind of like fair, right? Okay, you pray for that to happen to them, now it's happening to you. What could be more fair, right? Of course, God's not into fair, he's into just. Right? He's a just God, not fair God. Difference. But I found it intriguing. I don't know if anybody else noticed this. Anybody know how Christopher Hitchens, one of the most effective speakers against God, you know, anybody know how he died? Writes God is not great, how religion poisons everything. Anybody know how he died? Some of you know.
Cancer.
Cancer of what? Cancer of the mouth. He had cancer of his throat and his mouth. Those very organs which he used to curse God. Pay attention to this. To that. And to your point, to the point you're making, you know, God will sometimes make his enemies his friends, as he did with Paul. He made him his friend. And in the end, I mean, if God destroys his enemies through whatever means, we pray that he will do that. Some of which he'll make his friends, and effective friends they are. Or in that case, Paul is. Yes, another question right here. Paul is still a friend.
I was thinking about your question about pride as far as our ministry goes, and isn't there the verse Paul says that I planted and somebody else watered, but if God gave the increase? And so that principle can help us understand that, you know, we're just faithful servants in our ministries, whether it's our families or pastor, but ultimately God's the one that gives the increase in the company.
Yeah, that's always something to remember. Unless the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain. In vain. That's a strong statement. Vain? Like emptiness, like nothing, like grasping the wind? Isn't all my work for him worth something? No, not really, unless the Lord tells it. And yeah, we must remember that, because you know, it's possible for us to have pride over doing nothing, and it is possible to have great humility while doing lots of wonderful good things. Pride's a problem no matter what your station in life, no matter what you're accomplishing or not accomplishing or whatever. It's just always there ready to bite you like a snake. You can't ever get rid of it. I thank you for your kind attention here this morning.